My child, pause here for a moment. Do not move past these words as though they are ordinary, because something has been waiting quietly for you, hidden between silence and longing, and tonight it is finally asking to be revealed. You may believe you arrived here by chance, but your spirit has been carrying a question that your lips have not known how to ask. What you are about to hear was meant to find the part of you that has grown tired of guessing, tired of wondering, and tired of pretending that a certain connection no longer matters. There is a letter. It was written in secrecy, formed from emotions your soulmate could no longer contain, and although it has not yet reached your hands, heaven has seen every word. Your soulmate did not write this letter in a moment of passing emotion. They wrote it after fighting themselves for longer than you realize. They sat alone with memories they had tried to bury, conversations they had replayed, and feelings they had repeatedly told themselves to forget. Yet every time they attempted to move forward without acknowledging what was living inside their heart, something brought them back to you. A song. A familiar phrase. A quiet hour at night. A place that held no connection to you, yet suddenly felt filled with your presence. They began to understand that distance does not always weaken what is real. Sometimes, distance reveals what closeness once made easy to ignore. There is something important you must understand before the words of this letter are uncovered. Your soulmate has not been silent because they feel nothing. Their silence has been the result of feeling too much and not knowing what those feelings would require them to change. They have feared that telling you the truth would open a door they could never close again. They have feared your reaction, but even more than that, they have feared the possibility that you might still feel something too. Because if you do, then the excuses they have used to remain where they are would begin to collapse. The letter began with your name. They wrote it slowly. Then they stared at it. For several minutes, they could not continue. Seeing your name on the page made everything suddenly real. It was no longer a private thought floating through their mind. It was a confession waiting to take form. They almost folded the page and put it away before writing another word, but something inside them refused to let the moment end. Their heart had carried too much for too long. So they took a breath, pressed the pen against the paper, and wrote the sentence they have been afraid to say aloud. I do not know whether I still have the right to tell you this. Those words were not dramatic. They were honest. Your soulmate knows that time, silence, misunderstandings, or choices may have created a space between you. They know they may have left you with questions. They know there were moments when you needed clarity and received confusion instead. They remember more than they admit. They remember the change in your voice when you felt them pulling away. They remember the times you offered warmth while they answered with uncertainty. They remember looking at your messages and wanting to say more, only to choose safer words that hid the truth. But the letter does not stop there. After that first confession, something broke open within them. The words began to come faster, as though a locked room had finally been opened. They wrote about the moment they first realized you were not like the others. It was not necessarily the first time they saw you. It was a smaller moment, one you may not even remember. Perhaps it was the way you listened without interrupting. Perhaps it was the way your eyes revealed kindness even while you were protecting yourself. Perhaps it was a sentence you spoke casually, unaware that it reached a place inside them no one had touched before. That moment stayed with them. They tried to dismiss it. They told themselves they were imagining the depth of the connection. They found practical reasons not to trust what they felt. The timing was complicated. Their life was not in order. Their emotions were unfamiliar. Their past had taught them that closeness could become loss, and so they began to guard themselves before you ever had the chance to hurt them. But in doing so, they may have hurt you instead. This is one of the truths written in the secret letter. They know their fear may have appeared as indifference. They know their confusion may have felt like rejection. They know their silence may have made you question your value. And they are deeply sorry for that. Yet there is another layer to this story, one they have never fully explained. Your soulmate was not only afraid of loving you. They were afraid that you could see them too clearly. Around others, they knew how to present the version of themselves that felt controlled, capable, and untouched. But around you, their carefully maintained walls became difficult to hold together. You noticed changes in their energy. You sensed the words they did not say. You recognized pain behind their smile. Even when you said nothing, your presence made them feel seen. To be truly seen can feel like a miracle to a healed heart, but to a wounded heart, it can feel like danger. Your soulmate's letter admits this. They wrote that you made them feel safe and exposed at the same time. Safe because your energy did not demand perfection. Exposed because they sensed they could not hide behind old patterns forever if they allowed you to come closer. You awakened a version of them that wanted honesty, depth, tenderness, and commitment. But that version required them to confront everything within themselves that had kept them emotionally distant. They were not ready then. But something has changed. Recently, your soulmate experienced a moment that made them look at their life differently. It may have happened during a conversation, a lonely evening, or an ordinary moment that unexpectedly became profound. They saw the path ahead of them and realized that continuing to avoid the truth would not protect them from pain. It would only create a different kind of pain, the pain of knowing they let something rare disappear because they were too afraid to speak. That realization is why the letter exists. They did not write it to manipulate you. They did not write it to pull you back into uncertainty. They wrote it because carrying the truth silently had become heavier than the risk of revealing it. Something inside them finally understood that love cannot remain hidden forever without changing into regret. The next part of the letter was harder for them to write. They admitted that they have imagined speaking to you again. Not once. Not casually. Many times. They have imagined different versions of the conversation. In one, you answer warmly, and the distance between you begins to soften. In another, you remain guarded, and they accept that your heart has learned to protect itself. In another, you ask why it took them so long, and they struggle to give you an answer worthy of the pain their silence may have caused. They have rehearsed apologies in their mind. They have pictured your expression. They have wondered whether you would believe them. They have even imagined you saying that it is too late. That possibility frightens them more than they have admitted to anyone. But listen closely, because the letter reveals something your soulmate has never spoken aloud. During the time of separation, distance, or emotional uncertainty, they tried to convince themselves that what they felt for you would eventually fade. They believed time would make your memory less vivid. They thought new responsibilities, different people, and the noise of everyday life would slowly erase the connection. It did not happen. Instead, your absence became more noticeable. They began comparing moments without intending to. Conversations with others felt incomplete. Laughter sounded different. Emotional closeness seemed difficult to recreate. This does not mean they did not continue living. They did. They fulfilled obligations. They smiled. They participated in life. But beneath those visible moments was a quiet awareness that something genuine had been left unfinished. The letter contains a line they crossed out 3 times before finally leaving it on the page. I looked for the feeling you gave me in places where it could never exist. They were ashamed to admit that. Not because they did something unforgivable, but because it forced them to recognize how deeply you had affected them. They discovered that your connection was not powerful because everything between you was easy. It was powerful because it awakened truth. You reflected both their capacity to love and their fear of receiving love. You showed them what they wanted, and at the same time, you revealed why they had kept running from it. My child, do not misunderstand this message. You are not being asked to chase, wait endlessly, or abandon your boundaries. Heaven does not reveal truth to make you a prisoner of another person's indecision. This message has reached you so that you may understand what has been hidden, but your worth does not depend on whether the letter is ever delivered. Your value was never created by their recognition of it. You were worthy before they understood you, while they misunderstood you, and even during the moments when they failed to show you what you deserved. Yet something meaningful is unfolding. The letter is no longer hidden in a drawer where it can be forgotten. Your soulmate has moved it. They have read it again. They have added new lines. They have removed sentences that sounded too guarded. Each time they return to the page, they get closer to the truth they have been avoiding. One night, they whispered part of it aloud. The room was silent, but their voice trembled. They imagined you listening. They imagined your eyes. They imagined the pause that might follow. And then they reached a paragraph they could not finish reading because emotion rose too quickly. That paragraph was about the moment they believe they lost you. They remember that moment differently than you may expect. You may think they did not notice the shift, but they did. They noticed when your energy became quieter. They noticed when you stopped asking the questions you once asked. They noticed when you no longer reached toward them with the same openness. At first, part of them felt relieved because the emotional pressure had lessened. But the relief did not last. It was replaced by a realization that your heart was learning to live without their reassurance. That realization unsettled them. For the first time, they understood that your patience was not endless. Your love may have been sincere, but sincerity does not require you to remain where clarity is absent. They began to see that you were not withdrawing to punish them. You were preserving yourself. You had reached a point where continuing to pour love into uncertainty was costing you peace. The letter says, when you became quiet, I finally heard everything your heart had been trying to tell me. They wrote about your strength. They wrote about the way you continued moving even while carrying unanswered questions. They wrote that they once mistook your softness for something that would always remain available to them. But when you chose dignity over pursuit, something shifted in the way they saw you. They realized you were not difficult to love. You were difficult to love carelessly. That truth changed them. There are details in this letter that may surprise you. Your soulmate remembers things you assumed they forgot. A phrase you used. A small kindness. A vulnerable confession. A moment when you supported them without asking for anything in return. A look you gave them when words were not enough. These memories have remained alive within them, even through periods when their outward behavior suggested otherwise. They remember one particular moment when you were trying to hide your own pain while encouraging them. At the time, they accepted your kindness but did not understand its cost. Only later did they realize that you had been carrying your own emotions while still making space for theirs. That memory has returned to them repeatedly, and in the letter, they admit they wish they had stopped long enough to ask what you needed. This regret is not the end of the revelation. It is the beginning of something deeper. Your soulmate has been changing the way they understand love. They once believed love was mostly about intensity, the rush, the longing, the undeniable pull. But through your absence, they began to recognize that love is also responsibility. It is communication when silence feels safer. It is consistency when fear suggests retreat. It is honesty before certainty is guaranteed. They now understand that feeling deeply is not enough if those feelings never become courageous action. This is why the final pages of the letter are different from the first. The beginning is filled with hesitation. The middle contains memory, regret, and confession. But toward the end, the tone changes. Your soulmate stops writing only about what they feel and begins writing about what they are willing to do. They wrote that they do not want to return to your life with empty promises. They do not want to speak beautifully for one night and disappear when emotions become difficult. They know you deserve more than a dramatic confession. You deserve truth supported by action. But they are still afraid. They are afraid because approaching you means surrendering control over the outcome. They can choose honesty, but they cannot choose your answer. They can explain, but they cannot erase the past. They can reveal their heart, but they cannot demand access to yours. For someone who has spent so long protecting themselves, this vulnerability feels enormous. Still, the letter continues. I would rather tell you the truth and risk losing you than remain silent and know I never gave us a real chance. That sentence changed something inside them the moment they wrote it. It was the first time they stopped negotiating with their fear. It was the first time they admitted that the connection mattered enough to require courage. And yet, there is a secret within the secret. The love letter was not originally meant to be sent. Your soulmate wrote it as a private release, believing the page would hold what they could not say. They thought writing the truth might help them finally let go. But after finishing the first version, the opposite happened. Instead of feeling free from the connection, they felt more certain of it. The letter did not close the chapter. It opened it wider. They began to wonder whether the reason they could not move on was not because they lacked closure, but because there was still something real waiting to be acknowledged. That thought frightened them, but it also brought an unexpected sense of peace. For the first time, they stopped fighting the possibility that their heart had recognized something before their mind was ready to accept it. Since then, they have been watching for a sign. Not a dramatic miracle. Not thunder in the sky. Something quiet. A feeling. A dream. A repeated reminder. A moment that makes the path clear. And signs have begun appearing. Your name has surfaced unexpectedly. Memories have returned with unusual vividness. They have dreamed of you. They have felt sudden urges to reach out and then questioned whether it was intuition or longing. Each time they try to dismiss these moments, another one follows. They recently asked themselves a question they had avoided for a long time. What if this connection did not come into my life to be forgotten? The answer that rose within them was immediate. It came without logic, explanation, or proof. It simply said, then stop treating it as though it meant nothing. That was the moment they unfolded the letter again. They added a new page. On that page, they began writing not about the past, but about the future they had secretly imagined. They described simple things, not impossible fantasies. Honest conversations. Peace after misunderstanding. Laughter without hidden tension. The freedom to say what they feel without pretending they are unaffected. They imagined what it might be like to know you fully, not only through brief moments or emotional glimpses. They imagined supporting your dreams. They imagined learning the parts of you that your strength often hides. They imagined giving you the safety they once received from you but did not know how to return. This vision unsettled them because it felt natural. Not perfect. Not effortless. But real. The letter says, I do not want a version of you that asks for less so I can remain comfortable. I want to become someone capable of meeting the love you were trying to give. Those words came after a long pause. Your soulmate knows transformation cannot be proven through writing alone. They know anyone can make promises while emotion is high. This awareness is why they have hesitated to send the letter. Part of them wants to wait until they feel completely ready, completely healed, completely fearless. But another part of them now understands that readiness is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move with honesty despite fear. And that decision is becoming stronger. My child, there is a reason this message has found you now. Something is approaching a turning point. The emotional stillness surrounding this connection is not as empty as it appears. Beneath it, choices are being made. Truth is becoming harder to suppress. Your soulmate is standing between the familiar safety of silence and the unknown consequences of reaching toward you. But you, too, are standing at a threshold. You have changed. You are not the same person who once waited for fragments of clarity. The silence taught you things. It showed you where you had abandoned your own needs in the hope of being chosen. It revealed that love should not require you to constantly interpret mixed signals. It taught you that your heart can remain open without leaving your boundaries unguarded. Your soulmate senses this change. They know that if they come forward, they cannot speak to the old version of you. They must meet the person you have become, the person who can love deeply without accepting emotional confusion as destiny. This is why the next words in the letter took them longer than all the others. They wrote, "I know that loving you now may mean allowing you to decide that I arrived too late." Then they stopped. They placed the pen down. They walked away from the page. For hours, they did not return. That sentence forced them to confront the truth they feared most. Real love does not guarantee possession. Sometimes love must speak honestly while respecting the freedom of the one it loves. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that sending the letter would not be a claim over you. It would be an offering of truth. When they returned, they did not erase the sentence. Instead, they added another. But if there is even a small part of your heart that still wonders whether I cared, I need you to know that I did. I cared more than my actions knew how to show. They wrote through tears then. Not because they wanted sympathy, but because the weight of withheld emotion had finally become impossible to carry without release. They remembered the moments they could have been braver. They remembered opportunities to speak that they allowed to pass. They remembered how often pride disguised itself as patience, and how fear disguised itself as timing. The letter became less polished after that. The handwriting changed. Some sentences leaned unevenly. A few words were blurred. But those imperfect lines contained the most honest part of the message. I miss the person I was when I believed you might truly know me. This confession reveals something deeper than romantic longing. Your presence once connected them to a more authentic version of themselves. Around you, they felt the possibility of becoming softer without becoming weak, honest without losing control, and loved without performing. When the connection became distant, they did not only miss you. They missed who they were becoming with you. That understanding has shaken them. It has made them question choices they once defended. It has made them look at their current life and ask whether they are living from truth or merely maintaining what feels familiar. It has made them realize that comfort and alignment are not always the same thing. But there is still one thing they have not written clearly. They have circled around it. They have hinted at it. They have nearly confessed it in several different sentences. Yet the final truth remains unfinished. Each time they reach that part of the letter, they hesitate. It is the truth that could change the meaning of everything between you. It is not merely that they miss you. It is not merely that they regret the silence. It is not even simply that they still love you. It concerns a decision they made privately after writing the letter. A decision that required them to let go of something they had been holding onto for a long time. They have not told their friends. They have not explained it to their family. They have barely admitted it to themselves. But the decision has already begun changing their life. Your soulmate knows that once you learn what they chose, you may finally understand why this letter was written now and not before. You may also understand why certain delays occurred, why their energy changed, and why the connection has felt unusually strong in recent days. The page containing this truth is separate from the others. It was written later. It begins with the words, "There is something I must tell you before I ask whether we can speak again." They folded that page inward so it could not be seen when the letter was first opened. They read it once. Then twice. Then they whispered, "This is the part that changes everything." And just as they reached for the envelope, preparing to place the final page inside, their phone lit up with something they never expected to see. Something connected to you, something that made them freeze, pull the letter back out, and realize they may have far less time to tell you the truth than they believed.